Hello everybody, today let's take a closer look at the election for governor in Washington. It's an open seat as incumbent Democrat Jay Inslee has declined to run for term number 4. So theoretically this should be more competitive, but this state has not elected a Republican to governor since way back in 1980. That's a massive drought. We're going to see if the Republicans have a chance to snap that streak. So let's start with some background information here on Ballotpedia. So the first time since 2012 there's an open seat, and the nominee for the Democrats is Bob Ferguson. Ferguson is the current Attorney General, also having been first elected in 2012. Prior to that, his background is in law, and he served in local politics from King County. His opponent on the Republican side is Dave Reichert. Reichert served in the U.S. House from 2005 to 19. His district was more exurban, and prior to that, he served as the sheriff of King County for 8 years, and his background is, of course, as a police officer. Now, it's just going to be Ferguson and Reichert on the general election ballot. Now, we could take a look at how they did in their primaries, but Washington uses the top 2 blanket primary system, so all candidates, regardless of party, were on one ballot, and the top 2 finishers move on to the general election. In that primary, Ferguson got 45% of the vote. Reichert was at 27.5%. Reichert was considered more of a moderate candidate, but given there are so many candidates in this primary, I don't think there's a lot of benefit at comparing these numbers. You can add up all the Democrats and all the Republicans, but I think it's just going to be easier to move on to the general election. So let's go down here and see how this race is rated. So we've got Cook, Inside Elections, and Larry Sabato at Likely Democratic. That rating hasn't changed for the past month. My own rating at the beginning of the month was also a Likely Democrat. This state is clearly blue, so it's going to be an uphill climb for just about any Republican. But as I said, Reichert is considered a little bit more moderate. He's going to need to get some crossover appeal from Democrats and pull in a lot of independents. And he's also going to have to put up a relatively reasonable margin where all the population is in and around Seattle and King County. But Bob Ferguson's already been elected statewide 3 times. I think Democrats are satisfied with him as the nominee, so all he really has to do is get his own party to turn out and he should be able to win election. But there are some issues in this state: crime, homelessness, housing affordability. There's potentially an opening for someone like Dave Reichert, but so far it looks like his campaign has not really gained enough traction to make this truly competitive. If we go down here and look at the campaign financing, we could see Ferguson is clearly ahead of Reichert. This was updated at the end of July, and Ferguson has about twice as much. I don't think it's all about money, and I don't think it's all about partisanship. We've seen other blue states elect Republicans for governor. We've seen red states elect Democrats for governor. There's no reason that Washington can't be in the mood for a change in the governor's mansion. Now let's move on to the county map and see which way some of these counties have trended on a presidential level. So given that this election is going to run concurrently with the presidential election, the turnout should be high. That also might make it a little bit more challenging for someone like Reichert. But we've got the west side of the state, we've got the east side. Generally, we've got the Cascade Mountains that divide the two. The western part is significantly bluer. Let's go right in where most of the population is in King County. Almost 30% live here. Last time, Biden won it with 3/4 of the vote, and that is more than 5% better than Hillary and Obama in the 2 prior elections. Meanwhile, Trump ticked up slightly here last time, but he's still doing about 6 to 7 points worse than Romney did in 2012. So this is an extremely blue county with Seattle. It's known for its liberal and progressive politics. If a Republican is ever going to win statewide, they're going to have to get the margins here well under a 50-point deficit. Now, some counties that might be considered a little bit more suburban are going to be Snohomish to the north. That one is also clearly blue, but not as overwhelmingly blue. Biden last time won it by over 20 points, and that's the widest of the 3 most recent elections. So again, someone like Reichert would want to get that margin down to around single digits. Now to the south, we've got Pierce County. This is just a little bit redder. Biden last time here won it by 11 points. That's up from 7 in 2016. But very similar to the 11 points it was in 2012. So these counties are loaded with population, but the Republican appeal here has really struggled even before the days of Donald Trump. Now, we can't look at every county, but a few more to take a look at are going to be Clark in the south, and that has Vancouver. This county is even a little bit redder, but Biden still won it by 6 points. But you can see in 2016, it went to Hillary by only 0.2 of a point, and even though the overall support from both candidates was down compared to 2012, that margin was also just 0.2 of a point in favor of Obama, the Democrat. So Biden last time the first one to get a majority of support out of these 3 elections. Meanwhile, Trump's support is between Romney and his first run in 16. Now, if we go out to the eastern part of the state, then you do see a lot of red counties. Now, even though they're clearly in favor of Trump, a lot of these are not as overwhelmingly red as we've seen in some other parts of the country, such as in the Rust Belt. But Trump here is still easily able to get it up into the 60s and occasionally 70% in some of these counties. The problem for him is there's just not a ton of people in in most of these counties. But the most populous county that Trump was able to win is Spokane. He won it, but it was only by 4 points. If you compare that to 2016, his support went up 2 points, but Biden's support went up more than 6. So with less third-party vote, Biden was clearly the bigger beneficiary. So this is a good county to watch to see if maybe Harris can flip it this time, or if Trump is going to get some big turnout and it's going to get a little bit redder. Now, one more county to take a look at, and this might be the most important county of all. In the West, we've got Clallam County, and this county has the longest active bellwether streak in the entire country. I will have a separate video on this county coming up, but you can see it narrowly supported Obama in 12, then Trump flipped it in 16, then it swung back toward Biden in 20. It doesn't mean the streak is going to continue this time, but in the race for governor, this is at least a county that Dave Reichert is going to have to win, if not by a significant margin. Now let's take a glance at the most recent governor's election. Here, Jay Inslee secured his third term with 56.6. Lauren Culp was not the strongest candidate, and he got 43. For comparison, Biden got 58, Trump was under 39. So this race for governor was a little bit more narrow than it was for president. And if we go right back into Clallam County, you can see that Lauren Culp was able to win it, but it was only by about a half a point margin. But where all the population is in King County, Inslee's up there with 74%. That's not much lower than what Biden got. And out there in Spokane County, Culp won it by 10 points. That's up from the 4 that Trump won it by in the exact same election. So you can see it's a big uphill climb here for a Republican to win statewide. They've got to seriously cut these deficits down in the extremely blue counties. And it would also help them to really run it up in these red counties. Getting 58 or 60% of the vote just isn't going to cut it. They've got to do about 5 to 10 points better here. So given how blue this state is, you might think they haven't elected any Republicans statewide in decades. They certainly have done it more recently than 1980 in the U.S. Senate, but much more recently is back in 2020. Again, that's the same election we've been taking a look at. The election for Secretary of State was won by Republican Kim Wyman, and that actually maintained a streak of Republicans winning for this office going all the way back to the 1960s. It's an incredible streak considering the politics of the state. The streak was since snapped after Wyman stepped down. There was a special election. The Democrats were able to win it. There's always a chance it flips again here in 2024. But if you look at this county map, you can see that most of this state is red. There are only 3 blue counties. Of course, one of those is King. But Snohomish and Pierce, they went for Wyman the Republican, and she didn't just squeak it out with a 1-point win. She won by 7. Now, Secretary of State is far different than Senate and governor, but this just goes to show you what a Republican could potentially do statewide if it's the right candidate for the right office. Now, let's see what Ferguson and Reichert have on their official campaign websites. Here it is for Bob Ferguson. In case you're totally clueless as to who he is, you can see where he stands on the issues, take a look at his endorsements, donate to his campaign, etc. And here it is for Dave Reichert. Here you can meet him, see his stances on some of the issues, his endorsements, his events, donate, etc. Now, what about any debates? Well, we've already had 2 of them back in September. I watched one of them. Ferguson seemed a little bit more natural in the debate. Reichert seemed a little bit more unfamiliar. Not totally sure why that is, as he's no stranger to politics, given he served a while in the U.S. House. But it was great to see they had some debates. I tried to take a look at some of their campaign ads. The problem is Reichert does seem to put most of his on his Instagram. There wasn't much, and there wasn't much recent that was on his YouTube channel. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for me to do a video on those. But let's move on to the current polling. There's not a ton, but the most recent couple here in October have a clear advantage for Ferguson. Now, the polling quality and the sample sizes might vary, but Ferguson is just clearing 50%. Now, some of the older polls did have Reichert in the lead, but usually as we get closer to an election, the partisan lean of the state kicks in, and voters that might not necessarily be thrilled with Jay Inslee, they're probably not exactly going to be ready to make the move to Reichert. Now, Reichert is going to have to get out a ton of the Trump base. He cannot alienate them, but he also cannot alienate moderates and independents and suburban voters. I think he's going to get some, but as of now, it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. There could be late breakers that go toward Reichert. We have seen some races change direction in the final week, but unless there's an upset, Ferguson is the clear favorite. Now, for comparison, we can see how accurate the polls were in the last governor's election in 2020. Again, Inslee was at 56.5, Culp was at 43, and there's not a lot of polls here, but I don't see anything too far off from what they showed. As always, the polling could be hit or miss in any election. Finally, let's get on Polymarket and take a look at the market. So right now we've got Ferguson, the Democrat, is favored to win with a landslide at 95%. Reichert is all the way down there at 5. So what's the conclusion here for Washington governor? Well, it looked like Republicans might have had an opportunity for a dark horse type of pickup. Jay Inslee was retiring. There's enough dissatisfaction in different issues that could favor someone a little bit more moderate like Reichert. He's got that background in law enforcement. I've been saying this could have been an under-the-radar competitive race, but so far here in the past couple of months, it just has not really materialized. Ferguson has big name ID. He's got statewide wins. It seems like he's running a well enough campaign where all he has to do is just get enough of his own party to turn out. It is a blue state, and Republicans Republicans have had a big drought here for governor, someday that streak will snap. But with this high turnout election and most of those deep blue counties getting even bluer between the past two elections, the safe bet here is to say there's not going to be an upset and Ferguson is going to be the next governor. There could always be a scandal, there could always be late movement, but at this point there would have to be a big surge to put this race back on the map and make it truly competitive. So we'll see what happens, but that's a look at this race for Washington governor. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about this race? Is there any stopping Ferguson, and what does Reichert have to do to make it competitive? How much vote has to shift in some of these key counties? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to help support the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.